I'm going to interview Dwayne Wimmer. Dwayne is a fitness professional. He owns Vertex Fitness in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. And what we talk about this week is going to be of interest to everybody in the fitness world and anybody who wants to be in the fitness world. We're going to talk about, well, essentially straight talk and tough talk about what it's like to be a personal trainer. Dwayne pulls no punches about what he feels are lacking in the fitness industry. Sidebar, I pull no punches either. So I think you're going to get a lot out of this. Again, Dwayne has been doing this for a long time, about 30 years. So you're not going to hear this from basically anybody else. So if you're trying to be successful in the fitness industry, well, you got to do some work. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So I think you're going to get a lot out of this. Now, while that's going to form the bulk of our time this week, I do want to precede that talk with discussing the myth of the week. This myth actually came to me right after I recorded last week's episode, and it involves, well, plant compounds I'll bet you've probably heard about. They're called lectins. And the question I was asked basically was, well, are lectins bad for me? And, I wrote the person back and I thought that would be a great topic to discuss on the podcast. So let's delve into this. So if you're hearing about this for the very first time, you're probably saying, what the heck are lectins? Well, they're a type of protein. You can find lectins in a whole wide array of foods. I mean, gee whiz, you've probably heard about red kidney beans. So pretty much any kind of lentil or bean will have these lectins, but they're in basically a whole lot of things. Peanuts, goji berries, who knew that one? Chickpeas, tomatoes, potatoes, eggplant, whole grain foods, different fruits. So they're kind of all over the place. And you might wonder, why do plants make these lectin compounds? Well, the phrase that comes to mind, and it's not the greatest phrase, but I'm just going to say it. In the plants, lectins act almost as kind of like a natural pesticide. Again, that's not the best phrase because you're probably thinking, oh, pesticides are evil. But these lectins, they protect the plants from bugs, bacteria, animals that eat them, and stuff like that. So they do serve a purpose. And that makes sense. The plant's got to survive, right? So it has formed compounds and protection mechanisms to protect them from getting gobbled up. And that is where the lectin controversy begins, because while lectins kind of are toxic to bacteria and animals and stuff like that, the thought is if we eat lectins, then they become toxic to us. So is there any proof of this? So the idea here with the lectins is that when we eat the lectins, those toxic compounds, if you will, become toxic to us. And they might contribute to a whole bunch of different things, such as inflammation and the diseases that are linked to inflammation, arthritis, cancer, stuff like that. They might also cause us to gain weight. So is there any proof of any of this? Well, yeah, it's true that if you eat, say, raw beans, raw kidney beans or any other beans, that these lectins could bind to our intestines and cause some pretty severe things if you eat enough of them, such as, stomach cramps, and you might throw up and get diarrhea. So raw kidney beans and other foods that contain lectins, if you eat enough of them, yeah, that could actually be not so great for us. But who the heck eats raw beans? I don't. Do you? Turns out that cooking the beans, soaking the beans, if you go to the supermarket and you find them in a can, the canning process, any kind of preparation, if you will nullify the effects of these lectins inside us. So based on that, I would say you don't have anything to worry about. But let's tackle the claims that you may have heard about lectins. For instance, do lectins increase inflammation in the body? I hear that a lot. Turns out, I can't find any proof. I can't find any clinical studies showing that when people eat foods that contain lectins, that their cellular inflammation increases. Can't find any evidence that it, for instance, raises CRP levels. CRP is a blood marker for inflammation. Maybe in laboratory animals, it might if you give them raw beans, for example. But again, that's not necessarily how we humans tend to eat the beans. We tend to cook them or process them somehow. And again, that nullifies as lectins. Let's also remember that beans and other lectin foods are usually associated with not more inflammation, but less inflammation. And again, this is another one of the reasons why these foods are thought to be healthy for us. So I don't technically buy the lectins cause inflammation in the human body argument. If you're eating them cooked, if you're processing them, you're steaming them, you're throwing them in a slow cooker, well, then you got nothing to worry about. How about gaining weight? So that's another issue I hear about this. If you eat lectin foods, you're going to gain weight. Can't find any proof of that either. I looked, can't find any human clinical studies where they basically gave people lectin foods and weighed them to see if they gained weight or gained body fat. So I don't buy this either. Remember, the foods that contain these lectins are essentially fruits and veggies. How many calories are in fruits and veggies? Again, it doesn't make any sense that eating lectin foods would cause weight gain. How about this one? Do lectins cause arthritis or cancer? Again, these conditions are usually associated with an increase in inflammation, but again, can't find any evidence that lectins cause an inflammation in the human body. So likewise, I can't find any evidence that humans eating lectin-containing foods cause cancer, cause arthritis, cause diabetes. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Remember, lectin-containing foods are the same foods that are usually associated with less cancer, for instance. So it doesn't make any sense. And to play devil's advocate here, there's even some evidence that lectins may have anti-cancer effects. Again, this would lower your risk of cancer, not raise it. So I'm going to call this one a myth. It's unfortunate so many people buy into this, but it is a myth nonetheless. I don't care if they have a white coat or a stethoscope or a bunch of letters behind their names or they sound smart. The question you should ask when you're confronted with any claims that sound strange to you is, can you show me human clinical proof of what you're saying? In this case, I can't find any. So I'm going to call lectins a myth. Okay, so for the rest of this time that we have this week, I'm going to interview Dwayne Wimmer, who is the owner of Vertex Fitness in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. Again, if you're in the fitness world, you're going to find what he has to say very interesting. Also, I videoed our interview, so if you're on YouTube, jump over to my YouTube channel and you can watch our interview together as well. So without further ado, let's jump into my interview with Dwayne Wimmer, and here we go. Okay, I'm here with Dwayne Wimmer. Dwayne is the owner of Vertex Fitness in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania, which is in the outskirts of the Philadelphia region. Dwayne has been a successful personal trainer and entrepreneur for over 20 years. And so in this interview today, we want to talk about the fitness industry, also what Dwayne did to start his business, which I think is going to help personal trainers who maybe are thinking of going in business for themselves, the things that he wants you to realize. Also, if you're a personal trainer now, we have some straight talk that you need to hear about what personal trainers need to know if they want to be successful. So without further ado, let's talk. So Dwayne, you have been in business since 2001. That's when you started Vertex Fitness. And I had to ask the question, did you start your business before or after 9/11? Because it was 2001.
I started the beginning of June 2001.
Wow.
So we had three months under our belt, and then 9/11 hit.
And then everything changed. Wow.
That was tough.
Yeah, and for
you know what's really interesting is how similar today feels to then. Everything slows down.
Yeah. And for the personal trainers who are, in the early 20s, they're not even aware of what happened after 9/11. There weren't even planes flying, which was eerie back then. So was that the most difficult challenge you had when you started a business, starting right before 9/11, or were there other challenges that I think were even bigger to overcome?
Starting the business. See, what I wanted to do when I started my business wasn't just open a place where we did a bunch of jumping around and moving things and so on. I wanted to start a personal training studio that was basically the best gym you could ever possibly come across where you actually worked with a personal trainer. When I say gym, I having the best equipment that you could find, and then have someone instruct you to a level of detail on those pieces of equipment to get the most out of the you can work really hard and not get much from it, or you can have really good equipment and not get much from it. Let's put both of them together and get the most out of it. So I was not just looking for a space to spend some time with people. I wanted to actually buy equipment. So that being said, I didn't have the cash, so I was looking for a loan. And that was probably the hardest thing to do at that point, because it's probably harder now, but at that point, banks weren't loaning to fitness facilities, because so many were going out of business, and they looked at this as a really high risk. So I went to a couple banks, and I'm like, I have this great business plan, I have this great idea, and I have the background. And finally at one bank, they referred me to another bank where they could do a small business loan, SBA loan. And that's how I got started. And I still, that banker has moved to other banks, and I still follow him around because he helped me get my first loan. So that was the hardest part, is being rejected for that loan that I knew I could pay off, and the bank's not believing in it because the business of fitness wasn't a very viable business at that time.
It's a more viable business now, you think, for banks to give loans?
I would say not. Because you see it all the time. People get into business, into the fitness business, whether it be a franchise, or which is a little bit more stable, I would say, because they have the systems in place. But the hardest thing for someone getting into this business is they forget it is a business. It's like the music business. People love playing their instrument, but they forget it's the music business. And the same thing with personal training or the fitness business. It's a business. So you need to put your systems in place and make sure you're going to be able to support yourself.
Yeah. So for that personal trainer who's thinking about opening up his own personal training studio like you have now, get your credit checked. Make sure your credit is in the 800s or 700s as best you possibly can. Have an emergency fund. I personally recommend they have at least a year of an emergency fund, which means start saving now. So yeah, it's a challenge, especially even now with the crazy pandemic that's going on. So yeah, I would imagine.
And they're not going to loan you money. They're not going to loan you money just because you look the part. You're going to need some collateral too. I had to put my house up for collateral when I first started. So I had purchased a house a couple of years before, and that was, I had to personally guarantee the loan with my house.
Wow. So you went in all in, and you're a fitness person before you went in business with Vertex, before you started Vertex. I've met people who had no fitness background whatsoever who just wanted to get into the gym business. And I'm like, ooh, I think that's a mistake. Because they just didn't have any idea of what they were facing. Yeah, scary stuff. I would imagine for anybody, especially a business person without a background. But all that aside, so you've done this, and your website's actually really good. I would encourage people to go to your website if somebody wants to have their own website. One of the things I liked about yours is, you said we're not just in the business to make money, we're in the business to make it. We want to make a difference, which I thought was really good. That speaks volumes to me. Anybody who listens to my podcast know I usually end my podcast by saying, go out and make a difference. But also you have testimonials on your website, which I think speak volumes for anybody who's want to go to maybe Vertex or some similar place. The testimonial jumped out to me the most was the woman with lung cancer who you trained her, got her strong enough to dance at her daughter's wedding. We live in the world where everybody wants ripped abs and big guns and all that stuff. But dancing at your daughter's wedding when you have lung cancer, to me, that's much more valuable. And I think that's a message the fitness industry needs to latch onto. But we'll talk about the fitness industry in a minute. Let me jump gears and ask you, since you've done all this, what would you do differently if you were starting over today? I think people might want to maybe benefit from your experience, maybe mistakes you might have made along the line. So would you do of anything, differently if you had to start over again?
The biggest thing I would do different is I started with a business partner, and I would do it alone. The partnerships are really hard. Just think of it as a marriage that all you're doing is working with this person, and you're going to have differences of opinions, different views. I had the plan all together, and my partner came in at the 11th hour and said, "Oh, I could be a part of this, and I could bring some clients." And I thought, okay, let's do it. Without a lot of due diligence, and with a lot of good faith. And the lawyers at that time didn't help us that much. We didn't have a buy-sell agreement or partnership agreement, which, if you're ever going to be in a partnership, you have to get those two things in place before you go past any talking. You got to get a buy-sell agreement and a partnership agreement, because there's going to come a time that you don't see eye to eye, and you're going to possibly move in different directions, and you want to have this document in place when you're feeling good, when everything's rosy. You want to have each other caring for each other and doing the right thing for each other, so that when you don't feel that way, you have this document to go back on. Sort of like a prenuptial agreement.
Yeah, it kind of is a marriage, I would imagine. It really would be. So if you were starting over again, what's the very first thing you would do?
Well, I think when I started this, I had actually written the business plan about 8 years beforehand, and I had written it. I had looked into doing something similar, so I had a really good idea what I wanted to do, and I kept refining the idea over and over. I actually had gotten a loan 8 years beforehand and realized it really wasn't the right time or the right place, and got the loan, ended up paying it back, and then kept the business plan and just refined it. So the thing I would say is, if you're going to do something like this, make sure you have a plan, and it's well thought out. And not that it's going to go exactly as planned, but the more things you think about, the more things that you think could go wrong, and you think about a way around them or through them or over them, the easier it will be to continue once you do start.
Did you have any help making your business plan? Did you go to maybe the Small Business Association, or you just do it on your own?
This was back in the mid 90s when the internet was really new. And I actually pulled up a sample of a business plan and just word for word went through it and made it my own. And then when I did that, it really got you thinking about how you are going to do things, why you're going to do things. And the bigger picture is, is it viable? I learned this a long time ago. Some of the best business plans are the ones who tell you don't go into business.
That's really good advice. Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about like the personal training industry, personal trainers, and stuff that they should be familiar with. So we've both been pretty vocal about the fitness industry as a whole. What would you say is your biggest frustration or frustrations about the whole gambit of the fitness industry, the whole landscape?
If anybody's heard me talk on other podcasts in the past, that it's the whole idea of we really don't have terms that are well defined. What exercise means to one person may mean something else to another person. Walking your dog 99% of the time is not exercise. Going out for a walk isn't exercise for most people. Exercise needs to be a stimulus. It needs to be an overload. It needs to be something that your body has to adapt to. Not to take anything away from going for a walk or doing any type of movement, but exercise needs to be that stimulus. So if we can start by creating a hard definition on terms, I think we as an industry could be looked at as more of a profession. Right now, we got a lot of people just doing a lot of different things that really at best do not much, and at worst hurts people. So we need to get these definitions and then have people understand them to a level so they can adhere to their definitions. So the biggest problem right now is we as a fitness industry are really an entertainment industry. We're taking people's money to entertain them for a period of time. And we should be an industry that actually is in conjunction with the medical industry. I believe long term, we need to be a hand of the medical industry where we are not only are we helping people who have injured themselves and are getting them back into shape, we're doing we're getting people ready before they get injured, before they get sort of like sports. In sports, you exercise to get in shape to play the sport. You don't play the sport to get in shape. We as a fitness industry need to learn that we are here to get people in shape to live their life, so that their quality of life is greater than what it could be otherwise. That's really our job. So I think Steve Jobs said it best. We want to take the science and the human aspect and marry them together. That's where we are. We're the experience of the science and the human aspect together. So we need to base what we do more in the science of exercise and less in the entertainment of of having people in front of us.
I agree. I agree wholeheartedly, 100%. Especially what you said about the terminology. It occurred to me, it really is true. Fitness world isn't like a Tower of Babel. We have so many words that mean the same thing. I mean, I've had people tell me, the one phrase I hear over and over again is air squats. What the heck is an air squat? And I was like, demonstrate it. I'm like, that's a body weight squat. And I'm like, you're not, if your feet aren't leaving the ground, where's the air? So you're absolutely right. It is essentially a hodgepodge of invented words. And what you said about the entertainment industry, I agree completely. I get so annoyed at these reality shows that depict personal trainers, again, whether it be Biggest Loser or Extreme Weight Loss, etc. And they give people the idea that if you want to lose weight, you've got to do massive amounts of exercise. And it's ridiculous. It's not true. Nobody can do what they're doing on TV. The thing I take issue with is not once that I see anybody in the fitness industry, like in these organizations, taking any stance against those crazy TV shows. They were just happy to see personal trainers on television. So you're absolutely right. It's not the entertainment industry. You're there. You basically are. As I give people when I teach classes on this, I usually give them a definition of a personal trainer. A personal trainer is a member of the healthcare system who designs exercise in a specific dosage to achieve positive results in health and wellness and fitness. And there's no official definition of personal training. So that's the one I'm rolling with. And they look at me funny when I say that. I'm like, listen, you prescribe the only drug in the world that'll reduce simultaneously cancer, heart disease, diabetes, stroke risk, blood pressure problems, etc. No drug does that. And again, I agree. I don't think the fitness industry has really tackled that, addressed it as well as they should. Hopefully they're watching us now and they're saying, hey, those guys are making some sense. So I agree 100%. Exercise is a medication. Exercise is medicine. I'm sure that phrase is trademarked somewhere. So I agree. The fitness industry needs to step the heck up and do a better job with the definitions, as well as, networking with physicians, which I don't think they do well. They don't talk about it very much. You kind of leave it to the devices of the individual to figure out that. There's no certifications on, for instance, or classes on how to network with physicians and stuff like that. So along the same lines, do you have any frustrations with personal trainers, or as they sometimes call themselves, fitness professionals? I see that word a lot in journals. So I'll go with that, fitness professional, although we both know there's some people who are not professionals in the industry. So I have my own thoughts on that, but what say you on this issue?
Well, first of all, going back to what we just said about definitions, we have to know why we're doing what we're doing. Most people, if you watch them, and I think the worst thing for the personal training industry has been social media, because I can't do what I do virtually. A virtual personal trainer is not a personal trainer. A virtual personal trainer is basically someone giving instructions, and even if it is live via Zoom here, there's so much I do in a session that there is absolutely no way that I could do it here. It would lose so much effect virtually. And then you get the ones who do it, they just videotape themselves doing something and have you do it, and they don't even see you doing it. There is absolutely no way that person can correct your form, make sure you're not going to hurt yourself. And a good friend of mine said this on a podcast I did years ago. He said, we should take the same Hippocratic oath as a doctor. First, do no harm. If you're doing virtual training, there is absolutely no way you can guarantee that you're going to be able to keep that person safe. And for those who are taking people's money for virtual training, I think they're stealing. So that aside, most trainers, I would say, don't know why they're doing what they're doing with their clients. They have them doing things. If you have a 60-year-old woman doing box jumps, why? If you have a 60-year-old man doing a barbell squat, why? Now, if he's in a powerlifting competition and he needs to do the barbell squat for competition, now it makes sense. If you're trying to help him with general life, just to be a healthier individual, to live a better life, the barbell squat is probably not a good exercise to have them do when you weigh out all the pros and cons or the cost benefit of doing a barbell squat. You could get a very similar results doing safer exercises and have this guy with you much longer because he's not going to get hurt. So I would say most trainers don't understand why they're doing what they're doing. They just saw something cool on a YouTube video, or their friend told them about this exercise. They may not even know the proper technique of doing it. You go to any CrossFit gym, I guarantee you 90% of the people doing power cleans, first of all, don't even know where the power clean came from as far as an exercise. Two, have no idea what they're supposed to be doing, how they're supposed to be doing it. They just know it's a lot of work and it's going to make them sore and it's going to make them sweat. Well, okay, but why are you doing that? What is it? What is the benefit? And at what cost are you putting your body at just to do this exercise? So the bigger picture is the science behind all of what we're doing. Most personal trainers have no clue to why they're doing what they're doing. They don't understand the science behind it. And you and I talked offline, I don't even like calling myself a personal trainer because I don't want to be grouped in with 85% of those people out there who call themselves personal trainers who have no clue to what they're doing. So the bigger picture is, I think the industry and personal trainers themselves turn more people off of exercise long term than they do helping them, because one, they don't ever help them. They don't know what the person needs from them. They just give them the exercise that they like to do, or they saw on a video somewhere. And eventually the person either gets hurt or gets no results. And they think, well, exercise isn't going to work for me. So since I've been in the industry now over 30 years, there's been like 15 to 18% of the population uses fitness facilities for exercise. That has not changed in over 30 years. And the reason that hasn't changed is because we as an industry don't listen to the information that we are gathering from these clients or members who quit. They quit because we're not paying attention to them. We're not giving them things that actually get them results, and we're hurting them. So until we as an industry change that, we're going to keep working with that same 15 to 18%, the people who would exercise whether we're here or not, and we're never going to make any inroads into the true people who need us. I hope I answered your question. I went off on a tangent there, but I hope I helped answer that question.
You did, and I really appreciate it, because these are words that I think fitness trainers need to hear that they don't hear anywhere else. One of my problems with pretty much all these fitness organizations is they write these books which go into way, way too much depth, like they're teaching a class in exercise science at a university level, and they don't connect the dots. And so the student, the personal trainer reading this book, and they learn all this science, fast glycolysis and slow glycolysis, all this jazz, but they don't actually learn to put it all together. And again, look at that risk benefit ratio when they're working with one person one-on-one. Why am I doing this? Why shouldn't I do this? They don't consider that, because again, these books they're so complicated. Some of them, they're like medical textbooks, and they got these big $5 words. They don't even show you how where the words come from. And people, and again, they cost so much money, and people assume the more expensive cert is the better cert. I'm like, no, it's not. And again, it makes me think there's some money being made, in these organizations. Sidebar for me, I remember I reviewed one certification on my website a few years back, and it was about $1,000. And it was all online, for one thing, and everything was online. He even emailed you a PDF of the certification if you passed. And I remember even asking the owner of the company, I forget which one it was, and I said, why didn't you even send them a real certification in the mail? He says, well, we don't want to lose any money. How are you losing money? Everything's online. It's like, and people don't see this. It is so disappointing to me what's going on with the fitness industry and the personal trainers. They're just not getting it. Unfortunately, some do, but you're right. It's about 85% who they all want to be social media gurus and influencers. And I see them. They're flashing their butt and their guns on Instagram, and they think that's going to get the job done, and it's not. Most of them are not going to be an influencer. They don't do the hard work it needs, unfortunately, which is, staying home on weekends, working on your paperwork and designing programs for people. And, it is a challenge. But no, you definitely nailed it. And I think that I think the personal trainers who are watching us right now are getting a lot out of this, because they're not going to get this anywhere else. They're definitely not going to get this in the textbooks, because the textbooks are written, again, I think they're people who are in a lab or something like that, and they don't even have their pulse on what's going on in the world. For instance, one of my own little pet peeves about it is that these books, as expensive as they are, and some of them are like $100 almost, I don't think I've seen one of them that covers rhabdomyolysis, which again is one of my pet topics that I like to talk about. I wrote the first personal training book, I think, in the world that addressed rhabdomyolysis, personal fitness training beyond the basics. And I went on to write the first book about rhabdo. And again, it is, and I sometimes say in classes I teach, rhabdo is like Fight Club. The first rule of Fight Club is we don't talk about Fight Club. We don't talk about rhabdo. And I don't know why they don't want to talk about rhabdo. So I'm doing what I can do to, try to take them kicking and screaming into the 21st century, because, personal trainers are causing rhabdomyolysis. I've actually consulted in court cases against personal trainers who've caused this. It's sad. I just heard from someone recently who, got Rhabdo from a personal trainer, and he didn't want to give her a refund. It's like, professional, fitness professional. All right, I got to calm down. You got me started. So finish the question. I wish personal trainers would stop what? That's a toughie.
Yeah. Well, when you look at the whole industry of personal training, they need to stop feeling like they need to entertain, and they need to educate. Now, education or coaching is actually taking someone beyond where they think they can go on their own, not beyond their abilities, because your abilities are your limitations, but beyond where someone will take themselves. So your job is to teach them, obviously safely, take them to a place where they couldn't go on their own. So I think I wish personal trainers would stop feeling like they're in the entertainment business. I see people changing workouts just because they get tired of having someone do the same thing. Well, if you're a teacher, you need to do things over and over again before you get through the learning curve, and then you can really understand the movement. If you're changing the workout every time someone is working with you, you're entertaining them. They're not getting much physiological benefit from that. They're getting mind stimulus from that, which don't get me wrong. If you're not hurting someone, I'm not against it. Just be sure you're calling it the right thing. What you would call that would be entertainment. You're getting, or what I would rather call it is exertainment. You're disguising entertainment in an exercise form. So and if they're really not overloading their body, is it really exercise then? And you're just actually getting people to move around and entertaining them, which in and of itself is not a bad thing unless you're hurting them. So, but don't call it exercise at that point. So I think trainers think that they need to entertain people, and they need to think more about educating people.
I think you're right. I agree with you about, you said you didn't want to call yourself a personal trainer. I don't either. I say I'm an exercise physiologist. I think people may want to even discard that word. I think we are in the education business. We're in the health and education business. It's an uphill battle. I always remember you mentioned, the entertainment business. I always remember, I think it was the CEO of Planet Fitness many years ago. He called personal trainers rent-a-friends. And that's the head of Planet Fitness who did that. And I don't think a lot of people in the fitness industry picked up on that. I did. And that was probably about 5, 6, 7 years ago. And they just have to realize it is about education. You can't just it's about overload, and again, most of the personal trainers watching us right now or listening to us on the podcast, they know it's frequency, intensity, time, and type. It's about overloading the body with the frequency of exercise, the intensity of exercise, the type, the time of exercise. And that's how you're going to get results, by progressive overload, not massive overload, slow progressive overload. Take somebody who's never, did a deadlift before and suddenly start having them deadlift 500 pounds. For instance. So we have to be in the education business. And I think, again, that is a message that the fitness industry needs to pick up that mantle more than they really are. It's not just enough time to, go get your recertification every year, every 2 years or something like that. You need to continue to educate yourself. And I think a lot of personal trainers don't do this. I sometimes say in classes that I personally think personal trainers, or a personal trainer, I think personal trainers spend way too much time in the gym and not enough time in the library. I'm convinced of this. They believe myths. They believe, again, what they see the so-called Instagram influencers and YouTube influencers and all those other so-called influencers doing. They believe that is fact. They believe, what they read in a book, which may be written by somebody with no fitness background whatsoever. And again, it's unfortunate. So, but yeah, I think we definitely need to pick up the mantle as being educators on this. Let me ask you this. Speaking of education and knowledge, is there one piece of knowledge that you think personal trainers are lacking that they may want to pay more attention to, or, start reading more about? I know, for instance, with
Uh,
me, I think they don't know a lot about or anything about rhabdomyolysis or even dietary supplements. But that's my thing. Those are my pet peeves.
well, I think we need to stay in our lane is what I really need. I really think. First of all, you said about dietary supplements. I don't think personal trainers should be recommending dietary supplements. We're not dietitians.
Right.
If you're not a dietitian, you shouldn't be and you shouldn't be getting into that.
I
You
agree.
should refer out to that.
Yep.
Stay in your lane. Understand what you do, why you do it, and be the best at that. Don't be all to all. As soon as you go down that road, you're nothing to anyone. So if you are an expert in, you know, Olympic lifts, power lifts, and nutrition and this, you're an expert at nothing because you have not found your niche. You know, I do strength training. That's all I do. If you need to lose weight, I refer out to dietitians. I refer out to people who that's what they do. They refer to me when they need someone to get stronger and be able to move better. Um, is if you're trying to do all, you're not doing much for anyone because you're just slicing yourself too thin. Stay
I
in your lane.
agree. I agree. I think that's a great idea. There's heart doctors and brain doctors and foot doctors. Why can't we specialize? I think that's a great idea. I actually bring that up when I counsel trainers sometimes myself. You don't have to
I
be all things to all people. You don't have to be a massage therapist, and you shouldn't be. You don't have to be a weight loss coach if you don't know a whole lot about weight loss. Even on your website, you do say you contract out with nutritionists, dietitians in the area to help your clients. I think that's great. A lot of trainers don't do that. They put people on the diets that they do, which again, everybody's different, and you got to consider their medications and their health, and they don't realize that. They
they
don't.
don't
They don't realize that grapefruit can interfere with a boatload of medications. And in terms of the dietary supplements, which is something that I've been investigating since the 1990s myself, I'm with you. Most trainers don't know about dietary supplements. They're unaware. I wrote an article many years ago about personal trainers and dietary supplements, and I highlighted the most horrible case that ever occurred in the fitness industry. It was a poor woman who unfortunately died after taking a series of dietary supplements prescribed by her personal trainer. It was just horrible. I feel bad about that. And I tell trainers about that because they've never heard of that story before. It's just, it is heartbreaking. But yet you still see trainers, not only, saying, hey, take this, but sometimes now they're even in the arena of making their own dietary supplements, which is kind of scary because they may not be aware of what's in the product. Even today I got an email from a guy who he actually emailed me this morning before we went live, and he said, I think I might have rhabdo. And the workout that he told me he was doing was 100 burpees and 100 hammer curls, and then going out and running a couple miles. And I don't, and he's just basically started this routine. I'm like, that's not the greatest routine. And hopefully he's watching us when I do post this. And I wrote back and said, I think there's better ways to do things. But he also showed me some of his supplements he was taking. And I just thought, no, this is not, you don't need these supplements at all. So it's a quagmire for personal trainers. Again, they sometimes get lulled into the maybe quick money of dietary supplements, which I think is a mistake. I think you can make an argument for some supplements, but you have to know the health of the person. And you get into a situation where at some gyms, for instance, they're not even doing the PAR-Q anymore, the physical activity readiness questionnaire. They're just saying, hey, here's a personal trainer. There's no health history questionnaire. There's no PAR-Q issued. How do you know who you're working with? That to me is scary, especially when you start thinking about, oh, you need to be taking this supplement or that supplement. So it's scary, I have to admit. And I think it eventually.
I think one of the reasons personal trainers get into all these different things is they don't have enough confidence in any one thing that they're good at. So they try to make up for that lack of confidence with other things, just like I alluded to earlier, changing a workout all the time. You don't have one doesn't have enough confidence in really teaching a structured progression of exercises to be able to do that. So they baffle the unexpected client, the ignorant client, because most clients really don't know. So they're putting their faith in the trainer. They don't know the difference. So they're just going along with what the trainer is doing for them. They're changing it all the time because they just want to keep this person engaged and entertained, because they don't have the ability to teach over time, and they don't have the confidence in or the structured program to teach. So they're just making things up to keep the client engaged, which is sad, because then the client again doesn't get good results or gets hurt.
Yeah, I agree completely. Speaking of personal trainers, so when I was on your website, I noticed you had a quickie little form if you were looking to hire a personal trainer for your business, Vertex Fitness. And I noticed you asked, are you an American citizen? Do you have any, have you been, convicted of a crime? Which, I think people should be thinking about, you don't want to be going to jail to be a personal trainer. I mean, it's possible you might be able to be a personal trainer, but depending on the nature of the crime, that could be an issue. But if you're looking to hire a personal trainer, you actually go through, when you do hire a trainer, you have them go through, I think, a 6-week internship with you, which I think is fantastic. Yeah. Most fitness facilities, they don't do anything like that. They can't be a shirt that says trainer and they ask you for your certification and they kind of let you loose. Which, I think that goes along lines what you're saying about lacking confidence. But if you're looking to hire a personal trainer for your business, what are some traits and attributes that you would be looking for somebody who would be an associate, an advocate for your business?
First, you have to be willing to learn. And second, you have to understand you're probably not bringing any skill sets to me that I need. I have to teach you what you need to know to be successful in this business. Now, if you can't let go of that and you can't be, believe in the process, it's never going to work. So, I'm not LA Fitness. That piece of paper that you have that you spent hundreds or thousands of dollars on means very little to me. How can you take what I'm going to give you and regurgitate that in a way that a person across from you can then do the things you ask them to do in the proper way? So it takes a long time for people to, one, let go and allow themselves to learn what I'm doing, because what I do is pretty simple, but it's simple, but it's actually very specific. From looking at it from further back, it looks very, very, very easy to be a trainer here. But once you understand the minute details in every exercise and every movement, doing a chest press on a machine isn't that simple. I mean, there's various ways you can overcome the resistance, but there's really only it's a very small variations that I want you to be able to do. All those other things are just moving weight around. So what does it look like? And then how do we get people to actually do that? So the learning process here goes through, I go through a lot of things. You observe, you do it. You observe me doing it, then I observe you doing it, then, it's a back and forth. And then, over that 6-week period of time, at that point, you should be at the base level of understanding of what we do to be able to be in front of clients. That means that you're at the beginning process of employment, meaning you don't know it all. There's so much more to learn. If you really want to be successful, you have to continue learning. And I can guarantee if someone does everything I ask them to do within 24 months, they could be well on their way to making six figures in my business. But that means you have to do the things I ask you to do and actually apply them and get the return. So what do I look for? It's that clean slate, willing to be humble and realize you really don't know enough to be successful.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. And in this world of social media where everybody's trying to be an expert, kind of hard sometimes to humble yourself and realize you don't know everything, and none of us know everything. I think that one of the things I often say to trainers is if you were to read for say 15 minutes a day, you'd know more than most personal trainers in America in less than 6 months. Because again, it gets back to what I've said before, they don't spend enough time in the library, unfortunately. So if someone's watching us right now or listening to us right now and they say, this is great, I love what these guys are saying, I want to be a personal trainer. Is there one thing that you think they should know about personal training before they say jump in and they go and spend a lot of money on a certification? What should they be aware of in this industry?
I think you have to realize personal training is a continual sales process. Unless you understand sales, you can't be a good personal trainer.
Right.
You could be a decent instructor, but a personal trainer is someone who understands the person before they start with you, when they start with you, while they're working with you, and all through the process. And you should understand, if someone's ready to leave, if someone quits working with you, you should know. You should know long before they quit that they were ready to quit, and you should have been doing what you could to keep them engaged. And I'm not saying entertainment. I'm saying understanding them, understanding their needs and their wants, and trying to fulfill them. Now, that being said, there are limitations for what I do. I don't do certain modalities. If someone really wants to do the barbell squat, I don't do that. So if that's in their mind that this is what they want to do, I can educate them and explain to them why we don't do that. But if it's in their mind that they want to do it, they're going to look for something elsewhere. So, you have to find the right clients, and then you have to work with them within their limitations and your limitations.
Very good. When I teach classes, one of the things I say to personal trainers is, most of the people who hire you will probably have a health problem, and you can't train a not so healthy person the way you work with a quote unquote healthy person, which comes as kind of a surprise to some people when I say that sometimes, because they haven't heard that before. Is there anything that you wish personal trainers knew about their clients? Because those are just two things that I normally say to people. Don't assume that they're going to be healthy, because they may not be healthy, and they may have a health problem. I also actually say to them, most people who hire you are probably going to be women over 40. They don't really realize that as well. And so, again, I think that getting back to what you said earlier about the sales process, I think knowing your client is actually going to help you better. So is there anything that jumps out at you wish they knew about their clients that they may not?
Well, I don't know that you can go in and say, I wish I knew all this about you. I think you need to probe and understand. Remember, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. If you listen twice as much as you talk, you'll learn a lot about your clients. And you then take that information and you design your communication around what's best for them. So I guess to answer that question, you have to understand what kind of communication works best to get the results they are looking for and you are looking for. So communication.
I think it's a really good answer. When you were saying that, I was flashing back to many years ago. I read and I forget his name, unfortunately, the personal trainer who worked with Oprah originally when she lost all that weight, and he went on and wrote a book about it. And his name will come back to me probably like 10 o'clock tonight. But I remember he said his first meeting with Oprah, he said, she walked into his office and she wouldn't take her coat off. And he said, here was this woman who would get up in front of millions and millions of people every single day, but she couldn't take her coat off in front of me because she was embarrassed. And I thought there was a guy who really was looking at her body language, which again jives well with what you were saying about, we've got one mouth, we've got two ears, we've got two eyes, take notice of their body language, listen to what they're saying, ask questions, ask follow-up questions. It's not just enough to, meet somebody at the front desk and say, hey, come on, let's go and, do the leg press. You have to know who these people are, which again gets back to, something I think I said earlier is, a lot of gyms, they don't do health history questionnaires. They don't do the PAR-Q. And again, the trainer, I feel bad for some of the trainers in some of these organizations that they don't really know who they're working with. And that kind of scares me a little bit. And again, flashing back to what you said earlier today about the virtual personal training, I've also had my misgivings about them as well. What do you do if maybe you're watching your client on Zoom and they have a heart attack? How do you do CPR in somebody who may be, clear across the country? So that's something I think the industry needs to take on as well. That's again a conversation for another time. But yeah, I do think asking questions and getting to know your clients better is something I think a lot of trainers need to know. And again, we're just not there to educate or entertain them. We're there to educate them more than anything else and help them be a healthier person. So there's a lot of stuff out there floating around for personal trainers that are trying to grab their attention. And you got a lot of these, these so-called gurus out there right now, especially during the pandemic, saying, hey, I can make you a successful personal trainer. Just take my master class or, buy my book or whatever. And, I have misgivings about some of those individuals too, which I won't talk about for now. But what do you think are some hidden pitfalls that are stopping personal trainers from being successful today? What do you think they may not be doing, they should be doing if they're trying to be successful? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it goes along with everything we've been saying. You're trying to be all to all, and you're not creating a niche. You're not establishing yourself as an expert in any one area. If you are an expert in multiple areas, you're not an expert. So find out what you're really good at, understand it better than anyone else, and you will create you'll carve out a section of the population that will want that and need that. And then you have to learn how to sell it. I think everybody, they're looking at, I can work with everybody. Well, yes, you can. But will that create a good business for you? And eventually no one knows who you are or what you are, and you need to figure that out.
Yeah. You find your niche, solve people's problems better than everybody else.
Yep.
Yeah. So switch gears. Last question I got for you today. We've been talking about personal training and the fitness business for most of our conversation. But for that person who's watching us right now, who doesn't want to be a personal trainer, who says, you know what, I think I want to get a personal trainer, but I don't know who to pick. I see these people online and there are people at the gym, and who's right for me? What questions do you think that prospective client should be asking a personal trainer they're thinking of hiring, so they get a better idea if maybe they're right for you? Or for instance, I was at the post office a couple of years ago, and postman asked me, he says, hey, I got a free personal training session at the gym. Who do I pick? There's like 15 different trainers. And, I just off the top of my head, I said, ask them who they're certified by, but don't accept the letters, because everybody's got these letters, ACE and NASM and NSCA and all that. Ask them what the letters stand for. And if they can't tell you in 1 second, walk away. And I've actually, I said off the top of my head, and I've actually, used that over the years, and I've stumped so many personal trainers, and people have gotten angry when I say that. I'm like, you should know the organization you're certified by. So that's, to me, that's kind of my one question litmus test for the clients who are looking to get a personal trainer. But what do you think on all that?
I would say that they need to ask the trainer, what is it you're doing? And then they'll be able to go into all of these things, what they're doing, this, and this. And then the big question is why. If they can't tell you why they're doing what they're doing and what result it will come from it, you probably don't want to go there, because they're just someone who's doing all these different cool things that they think is cool found it here, there, or somewhere else. And they don't know their why. I read a book by Simon Sinek. It's Start with Why. If you can't sell why you're doing something, you're not going to keep people. So if that trainer doesn't know why they're training you the way they're training you, I would go somewhere else.
I think that's a really good thing to ask. Why? Why are you doing this? Yeah. Dwayne, you've given people, I know, a lot of things to think about today, and I'm really thankful you came on my podcast. I have a feeling this is actually going to be very popular with those in the fitness industry and those who want to be personal trainers, because they're not going to hear this from anywhere else. They're not going to hear it from somebody who's been in business for 30 years. Most likely not anyway. So I really want to thank you. Dwayne Wimmer of Vertex Fitness. Dwayne, last question. Where is the very best place people can get a hold of you?
Well, you can go to my website. It's vertexfit.com. And, you can submit at the end, there's a contact us there. Or, just my email address is dwayne@vertexfit.com. And if you're on social media, I'm all over that. So you can just look me up and, connect with me there.
And I'll link to all that in the episode notes, which will go with this episode. So yeah, no problems there. Dwayne, I really want to thank you. This has been a lot of fun, very educational I know a lot of people, and again, I can't thank you enough. So thank you. And, I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me on.
My pleasure. So what'd you think? I honestly have been wanting to do an episode on the fitness industry and personal training for a while. But instead of me just sitting here rattling off things, I really wanted to interview someone who's been around for a long time. Dwayne definitely fits that mold. Hopefully you took some words of wisdom from his straight talk, whether you're a personal trainer now or if you're thinking about becoming a personal trainer. I really do think this is going to add to your knowledge base. So I would encourage you to go back and listen to this again, because there were just so many nuggets of information in this. I just couldn't count them all, to be honest with you. If you need to get a hold of me, I'm pretty easy to find. You can find me at either of my websites, joe-cannon.com, joe-cannon.com, or supplementclarity.com. By the way, if you are in the fitness business or you're thinking about becoming a personal trainer, on my personal site, joe-cannon.com, that is where I do an awful lot of writing about personal training, certifications. If you're thinking about what certification is right for you, again, I break it all down. I interview people who've taken these certifications to help make your life a little bit easier. So do take advantage of it. It's 100% free. Okay, so hopefully that'll help you as well. So that will bring our time this week to a close, except for one final piece of business, and that is the quote of the week, which comes to us from Mother Teresa, who said these wise words: "I cannot change the world, but I can cast a stone across the water to create many ripples." Until next week, I'm Joe Cannon. Be safe, and where you can, don't forget to try to make a difference.